Number 10. The tank stuck in mud. In the middle of a nature reserve in Brandewald, Germany, you might just stumble across something quite surprising hidden in the undergrowth. If you look closely enough, you'll find the remains of a 1950s American Bundeswehr M47 Patton tank. The tank hasn't moved in a long time, and it's pretty clear to see why, as it's bogged down in layers of dense brushwood. The tank has been there for decades, but nature has not been kind. Its engine was cut out long ago, and its hatch is rusted and welded shut. Before the area became a nature reserve, the site was home to an army base and training camp. But troops didn't drive the tank. Instead, this tank and the others that are hidden around the area were used as target practice. The location was converted into a nature conservation area in 1975 and placed under ecological protection, with the designated nature reserve area occupying around 75% of the former military site. The area now provides a home to many strange and unique flora and fauna species that thrive around the war machines. Surrounding a large piece of one of the tanks, there's even a pool of water in which rare pond life flourishes. Number 9. The cave filled with cars. Rooted within an old mine in Gwynedd, Wales, curious explorers found something strange. You might expect them to have found some old mining relics and tools, or maybe even an ancient burial site. Well, they did find a burial site of sorts, but it wasn't for humans. It was for cars. Within the deep bowels of a flooded chamber of the Gerwen slate mine, in a sloping tower sprawling up to the surface of the cavern, are hundreds upon hundreds of cars, their reflections glinting back onto the still waters below. The cars mainly date from the 60s and 70s, with a sky blue Ford Cortina taking center stage in the middle of the pile. There are many theories as to how this large horde of cars ended up here after the mine's closure in 1960. Some believe that it makes the final journey of vehicles unable to handle the treacherous country roads above. Others believe that the cars ended up there as part of an insurance scam. Due to a large amount of other domestic discards down there too, such as old refrigerators and boxy TVs, the final speculation is that it was simply used as an illegal landfill for people to get rid of things they no longer wanted. Sadly, after the discovery of this car cemetery went viral, the site is now heavily vandalized, with many cars falling into the waters below and trash littering the vehicles and mine. It's advised not to visit this makeshift scrapyard, as not only is the mine shaft itself dangerous, but the underground lake has been polluted with oil, antifreeze, rust, and other chemicals from everything that's been abandoned there. Number 8. The jet in the woods. A rather surprising discovery was made in the woods in the northern state of New Jersey in a town called West Milford. If you venture far enough through the chilly forest, you'll come across a crashed fighter jet rusting away on the ground. Measured by the age of most of the trees that had sprouted up surrounding the jet, it's clearly been laying there forgotten for quite some time. The jet shows signs of how old it is and of the crash that landed it in the forest. It's not fully intact. Its tail can be found around 50 yards away from the body. Given its rusting condition, it can't be determined just what type of fighter jet it actually is. But when did it get there? To find this out, we have to look at a report from a police officer in the summer of 1967. Bilgin Data received reports of a plane that went down in a particular area and headed out to the site. When he arrived, he didn't really know what to expect. Bill found the pilot of the jet sitting dumbfounded on the wing, but surprisingly okay despite plummeting to the ground. He explained his friend was also with him, but that he was nowhere to be found. Miraculously, they found the pilot's companion a short distance away, and although he was injured, he did make a full recovery. Further information about the jet has since emerged. The Marine Lockheed Martin T-2V Sea Star trainer was on a routine training flight when it came crashing down. However, the reason why it crashed has never been figured out. Number 7. The helicopter on the beach. The beaches of Grenada are straight out of a holiday brochure, with crystal clear waters, white sands, and rays upon rays of glorious sunshine. We'd be more than happy to get out our reclining beach chairs, put our shades on, and relax. But wait, is that a helicopter over there? Yes, it is. The gigantic chassis of a U.S. CH-46 Sea Knight helicopter lays abandoned on the sands, surrounded by palm trees right by the water's edge. Contrary to belief, it's not stranded because its crew decided to ditch their military duties and go for a vacation. Instead, this military aircraft was shot down in 1983 during the invasion of Grenada, led by the US and other Caribbean nations to protect its residents and prevent the spread of communism. The assault lasted just a few short days before the US gained control of the island nation. Remarkably, it's still in decent condition, most likely due to the fact that because it's retained its rotors during the attack, the pilot was probably able to lower the aircraft down gently to cause the minimum amount of damage. Number 6. The bike in the backyard. We've all done it. After months of putting it off, we've gone out to our gardens to finally complete the project we said we're going to do, and then find something completely random out in our backyard. Normally, it's something small and silly like an old bottle cap, coin, or some old toy long forgotten and buried. However, in 2009, one couple from New Zealand found something a bit more impressive. Karen Amore and her partner were digging up their lawn when Karen's spade hit something metallic. She looked down to see that she'd hit a spring. At the same time, her partner wielding a rotary hoe felt the tool clang against something hard. It made a rough dinging sound, indicating that it was also metal. The pair started to work carefully to find out what exactly they had unearthed, and slowly but surely a rusty vintage motorbike started to emerge. Although parts of it had eroded over time, miraculously the motorbike was still intact, although its condition meant any defining features had been broken down. The only visible markings left on the bike are patches of green paint and its number plate, but national records don't stretch far enough back for this to provide any real answers. It also has a gate change, meaning the gears weren't switched by foot, but rather by hand. As a result, it's been hard to identify just what kind of motorbike it is, although experts believe it dates all the way back to the 1920s, making it almost 100 years old. The best guesses people have come up with are that it's a British bike, likely an Ariel or a Royal Enfield. Number 5. The Mojave School Bus. Sometime during 1984, a school bus made its final journey down the old Mojave Road, located within what was later to become the Mojave National Preserve. The road stretches 133 miles and was used as a route by early pioneers. The random bus sits abandoned on the road, and it's become a cultural hotspot for travelers making their way through the area. Its visitors have been both kind and cruel to the rusting vehicle, with bullet holes riddling its sides and the bus being tipped over on occasion. However, it would always be put back on its wheels again by kind folks passing through, with photos and videos found on the internet showing people's efforts to restore the yellow rust bucket the right way up. In 2018, the land that the bus was parked on was given to the Mojave Desert Land Trust, who moved it to their parking lot much to local dismay. However, this was not for long, as the Mojave Desert Heritage and Cultural Association Center rallied together to relocate the bus close to its original resting place in the East Mojave Desert. The bus remains a hotspot for travelers and tourists to this day. Number 4. The Mami S Barrett. If you head on down to the Mississippi River and go inland a few miles, you'll find a rusting relic from the old days of river travel known as the Mami S Barrett. The steamboat has been left and forgotten on the side of the dirt track. The Mami S Barrett was originally a towboat made in Indiana in 1921. It spent the first 2 years of its service ferrying ships through the waters, but this isn't where the ship found its glory or why it made it onto our list today. In 1923, the 146-foot-long boat was brought to Alabama, where she was under the ownership of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Among her passengers at the time was someone rather special, President Roosevelt. The Mami S Barrett served as his personal headquarters as he traveled the length of the Mississippi River, inspecting each tributary, town, and city along the way. Since this time, the steamboat has had a few other occupations, including a clubhouse and restaurant and a showboat with a built-in theater in the 1980s. However, now this deteriorating piece of history lies abandoned in Louisiana, just a stone's throw away from the river she once made her home. Sadly, there are no plans to restore her to her former splendor at this time. Mami S. Barrett did many noble things, but there aren't many boats that can say they were a second home for a president. Number 3. The Red Star Train Graveyard. Sprawled across a Budapest suburb, the Istvantelek train yard is the final resting place for multiple locomotives used throughout Hungary and beyond. More than 100 trains, some steam trains, and some more recent carriages from the communist era can be found here, either under cover in large hangars or outside. You can find some great surprises and some unsettling surprises among the convoys that lay there. Train spotters will be keen to note that some rare engines, including the MAV 301 series, which was in use from 1911 to 1914, and a number of the red-starred MAV 424 steam trains that gave this site its name. History lovers will be in for a treat too. In some of the more recent carriages, you can find some rare gems like old train tickets from the 60s Soviet era. On a more chilling note, you can also find some German cars that are heavily thought to have been used to transport Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz in World War II. Being left to the ravages of time and the elements, many of the trains are now heavily rusted or overgrown with foliage. It's possible to visit the Abandonment train yard, but make sure you have the right papers first. Number 2. Chateaune Car Graveyard. If you travel to the small village of Chateaune in Belgium, beware of the traffic. There's been a traffic jam winding its way through the forests for decades. Hundreds upon hundreds of classic cars such as an American-made Pontiac Chieftain, Ford Thunderbird, and many others snake their way through the trees. But how did they get there? Rumors have circled that the cars belonged to U.S. servicemen who were stationed in the country during World War II. They bought cars when living there or brought them with them across the pond, but when the war ended it was way too expensive to take them back with them when their tours ended. As a result, they just drove them up a hill one by one and left them grouped together on the outskirts of town, hidden away from the rest of the world. Other theories suggest that the cars belonged to a dealership in the village that catered to the local people and the U.S. Army, and that when the owner died, the cars were just left to decay. If you think you could therefore score yourself a free car, you'd very much be mistaken. Over time and due to the conditions, the cars have rusted away to such extremes that in some cases it's difficult to tell that they were once there. Most are just crumbling shells of their former selves. On top of that, some areas of this massive car graveyard have since been cleared away. Number 1. The most expensive abandonment. Normally, when a vehicle is left abandoned, it's worth little more than its scrap value. But that's not entirely true for all abandoned cars, as some of the vehicles on our list show, but a lot of them are likely worth a few thousand at most. When the war in Vietnam started to go poorly for the US and the South Vietnamese government, mass retreats were developing across the country. As the soldiers left the battlefield, hundreds upon hundreds of army trucks, planes, tanks, and other vehicles were left stranded. How much do you think all this would be worth? At the time, newspapers and government officials reported that the losses came to over $1 billion. Now, this was in 1975, over 45 years ago. With current inflation, that would amount to almost $5.5 billion today. The most shocking thing about this, they managed to abandon and lose all of this within 2 weeks. Even the most expensive thing you've lost doesn't even compare to this. Thanks for watching. Which one of these abandoned vehicles shocked you the most? Have you ever found an old car hidden away somewhere? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.